Hey guys, this video is going to go over interest. We're going to look at how to calculate simple interest and compound interest in different situations. This is just a little flow chart to help you identify how to find simple or compound interest. We can look back at this a little bit later, but it is in your journal notes. We will come back to it, but let's first find out what is simple and compound interest. Alrighty, so what basically is interest? Interest has two different meanings. It can be something that you personally earn and you get more money, or it can be something you have to pay to someone else, so you would give them back extra money. So I'm going to highlight, it has two meanings. One of them is when you earn money. That's when you invest money either in a company or in a savings account. Then the second one was cost. This is when you borrow money from either a bank or you charge money on a credit card. It's what extra money you have to pay. There's a handout also that's going to go over this simple interest formula on your page. We'll open these tabs in a minute. But underneath it, it says, hey, here's what you need to know. If you're going to be calculating simple interest, it tells you the interest only. If you need to know the total amount of money, then you have to add your principal, and this will make sense later in a second, with the interest that you earn in order to get the total. This page shows each one of the flaps on that foldable. I'm just going to go through what the letters mean in the formula. The first one, letter I, stands for interest. The second flap, letter P, stands for principal. It's the starting amount of money, basically, that you have. The R stands for interest rate. The main thing you need to know on this one is you have to represent your percentage in decimal form. And in order to do this, you would move the decimal 2 times to the left or divide by 100. The letter T stands for time. And this always has to be represented in years. If for some reason that you got months, you would divide this by 12 to convert it into a decimal. So I can add that. So this would have just been 6 divided by 12 is how they got 0.5. Then here's the example at the bottom. It says you put $5,000 into an account with an annual interest rate of 3.5%. How much interest will your account earn in 4 years? So when I go back through, the amount you started with is your letter P. Your interest rate is your R. And then your years would be time. And then now they've put it into the formula in the place of those 3 letters, multiplied it together, and you get your value. All right, the first example that we're going to try on our own, it says Mrs. Adams deposited $12,000 into an account that earns an annual simple interest rate of 3.25%. She makes no other deposits or withdrawals. What this means is she's not going to add extra money or take away any money during this time period. Then the question says, how much interest will Mrs. Adams have earned at the end of 8 years? The first thing I need to do is go through and identify, am I doing simple or compound interest? So this says annual simple interest rate of 3.25%. So that is my letter R. The amount of money I started with was what she deposited, which was $12,000. That's letter P. And the amount of time was 8 years. I can put my formula down. I equals PRT. Substitute the numbers now. Instead of P, I'm going to say 12,000 times the interest rate. But I need to move the decimal or divide this number by 100. It's 0.03 0.25. If you're not ever sure, then just type your number as the percent into the calculator and say divided by 100. Then that will tell you what your decimal version would look like. So 0.0325. And then the amount of time is already in years, so I can just say 8. And this will tell me my amount of interest. When you type all of that in your calculator, you get $3,120 exactly. Because that says that is interest. I'm going to go back and double check my question. It says, how much interest will Mrs. Adams have earned at the end of 8 years? So since this actually is asking me for interest, then that matches what I have right here. If I needed the total, you would take the amount of money you had at the beginning plus your interest. So this is your principal plus your interest, and that gives you your total, which would have been $9,120. But this question just wants interest only, so we're good to go. Then my answer choice would be D, $3,120. On the next page, we have our foldable for compound interest. As you look at this, at the beginning it says A, so that's going to equal a different amount. And then in the formula, we have a parentheses, we have 1 plus, and then now our letter T is an exponent. It's not a normal, it's an exponent. Underneath, it gives you a reminder. It says if you're finding compound interest, it's going to tell you the total amount of money only. If the question had been asking for you to determine the interest, you would need to subtract your principal or your starting amount from the total that you get from this formula. Once you open the foldable, we're just going to go through the parts of what it means. The letter A, it stands for the final amount of money, not the interest, but the total amount of money. The letter P stands for, again, your starting principal or the amount that you put into the account. The letter R stands for your interest rate, but remember, it's got to be a decimal. The letter T stands for time, but it always has to be in years. They've done a different one for us this time. They did 5 years is 5, 9 months. I would do 9 divided by 12, and that's why I get 0.75. Then at the bottom, there is an example. It says you put $5,000 into an account with an annual interest rate of 0.25%. How much will your account be worth after 3 years? So I'm just going to go through and label these. The amount of money I started with would be my letter P. The annual interest rate is my R. The amount of time would be years, 3. Then they have now substituted in those numbers into the formula, noticing they put the number 3 this time as the exponent. When you type that all in, you get the total value of $5,384.45. Okay, let's try an example. This one says Jacob deposited $6,000 into an account that offers 4.5% interest compounded annually. He makes no additional deposits or withdrawals, so he adds no extra money or takes any away. Which amount is closest to the interest Jacob will earn at the end of 10 years? So my first thing to do is go identify what type of interest am I earning. This says compounded annually. Okay, compounded means I'm going to do this compound interest formula that starts with letter A. Then I can label this with my letter R because now I know my interest. I could either divide that by 100. 4.5 divided by 100. 0.045 is the number I'm going to use. Then the other thing is principal. My starting amount was $6,000, so I'll label that with P. Then the amount of time, it says at the end of 10 years. So letter T. Okay, I can now write my formula. Since I know it's compounded annually, the formula is A equals P parentheses 1 plus R, close parentheses, T as an exponent. Letter P was $6,000, so 6,000 parentheses 1 plus, my interest rate once I converted it to a decimal was 0.045, close parentheses, and T, time in years, is 10. So 10 is my exponent. I'm going to say A equals. When I type all that in my calculator, I get 9,317.81653. Money does not have this many digits behind the decimal, so look at your third digit to know if you round up or stay the same. This one's big enough to round up. So the final amount of money, remember that's what the A equals. Final amount of money should be $9,317.82. Okay, before we choose that as an answer choice, we need to come back up here and read to see what is it asking for. This says which amount is closest to the interest. That doesn't say final amount of money. This says interest. So now what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to take my final amount of money and I'm going to subtract the principal to just get my interest. So my final amount was $9,317.82 minus the starting amount of money I had, which was $6,000, and then the leftover $3,317.82. This is the amount of interest. That is what this question is asking for. So my final answer would be H, $3,317.82. All right, so again, we have this handout that was at the beginning of the video. Now it might make a little bit more sense, but what we're saying is first identify if the question wants simple or compound interest, and then you would just follow down this flow map. The first thing is once you know what you're working with, then you're going to put down your formula. We want to know identify the variables. What do all these letters stand for? So those are written out for you right here. It also shows you when you're doing time that you want to convert it to years. You should do months divided by 12 always. Once you know what they stand for, substitute in the actual number values for the letters, then solve it. Then reread the question and know, is it asking for interest only? If so, stop. Is it asking for a total amount? Then you're going to have to, in simple interest, you would add them back together. If you're in the compound section, if it's asking for interest only, remember we just had to subtract the total amount minus your starting value. If it was asking for the total amount, then you would stop on compound because you're done. So what I might do is put stars beside this, reread the question when you get to the end to make sure you know, are you looking for interest only or are you looking for total balance? Are you looking for interest only or are you looking for total balance?